Good Thursday, everybody. Income 831. Welcome to week. Boom, bang. 12. Whew. 4 weeks to go. Hang in there. You can do it. And speaking of doing it, let's do the last of this coffee. Okay. Another week, another video, another now sufficiently caffeinated communication instructor, which is I. Welcome, everybody. Blessed Holy Week to you for this week. In recognition of that is you might have plans for Sunday. In fact, I think I'm hoping that you do. I have extended the due date for the discussion sections to midnight on the 8th of April. That's a Wednesday. So if you don't have a chance to get this stuff in the can before then, that's okay. That is before Sunday. Okay. Yeah, and I encourage you not to work on Sundays anyway. That's why I set it up the way I did originally. Anyhow, but if you need a little extra time, you got it. Okay. So for this week, we are starting a new book, a book that I really, really like. It has been around a while, but it is absolutely full of all kinds of nuggets of information, and that is The Future of Not-for-Profits by Neff and Moss. Right there. All right. And the reason that I include this book in the course in this topic is, one of the areas that I see doesn't get treated with really, I think, as much as the attention that some people have in it is the not-for-profit sector, because there's a lot of good work that you could do in not-for-profits, and within that sector, there are often career opportunities. There are usually a lot of jobs. There's a reason for that, because as an industry, there tends to be a lot of high turnover. It's a high demand industry by way of work, and depending on what you're doing, emotional investment. Okay. There's a lot of pressure. Organizations, they're about show me the money, because if not, then they don't operate. And so, on the one hand, there's a lot in way of possibilities and jobs and things you can get into. On the other hand, there's a lot of possibilities and jobs and things you can get into, because it is an industry that's full of disruption. There's a lot of turnover. So if you don't mind, and look, it's up to you. Um, it's sort of, what might go into the category of risk tolerance. How risk tolerant are you as to whether or not you want to be in a job that holds, the potential for high return? And there's some serious money to be made in the not-for-profit sector. You might be thinking, oh, how's that? Especially when you get up into some of the organizations that are national or international level. And if you're responsible for collecting the money, look, I will give you this as a truism. You figure out how to talk to people about money such that you connect, you create a bridge between what it is that they're passionate about and want to get done, and the organization that's getting it done. You will never lack for a job. You figure out that dialogue, you will always be in demand. And so there are positions that are much beyond six figures at the high levels of this industry, national and international. So if it's something that interests you, I encourage you to check it out. I've worked in the not-for-profit industry for almost 2 decades. So if it is something that interests you, you can contact me, privately. Say, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I know. This is what I might want to do. We can talk. But this book, Neff and Moss, as an introduction, I believe, it's, again, although it's dated, it's older. There are still some truisms in there, especially concerning how and why changes have come about in not-for-profit. And as we get a little bit further into this topic of not-for-profit, I'm going to give you material by individuals that will talk about, some of the attitudes within not-for-profit that are helpful in getting the work done and that are a hindrance to getting work done. Some of the thinkers and movers and shakers that are grappling with that and trying to figure out ways around it. Okay, so chapters 1 through 4 in Neff and Moss, and I hope you enjoy this. Continue to work on part 2 of your paper. Remember, if I've given you a note that, hey, we need to talk, you need to get in touch with me and make arrangements. And in particular, right now in this semester, it's really during my office hours that I have time for you. This time of year, there are a lot of folks who have graduation requirements to get filled, and one of those requirements, depending on what they're doing, is the completion of their dissertation. So those of us in the department that serve on dissertation committees, we have a lot of work being lumped onto our plates with reading and editing and defenses and that sort of stuff. So it just cramps my availability throughout the week. Okay, so get in touch with me. All right, let's take a look at last week and the questions. I gave you selections from the dissertation that I did when I was a student at Regent to give you sort of a different perspective of the interface between distressed peoples and social media applications. Because if you read, guys, sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Schmidt and Cohen, you would think that this is just the most wonderful thing, social media, since ever. And I remember that book was released, it was in 2013 or something, and I had been working around the world quite a bit and seeing social media used in some out of the way places, but I just wasn't seeing the effect that the authors were promising. So I thought, okay, let's go ask the people. All right. There is a similar phenomenon underway with AI, as we talked about, the week back in week 10. And this is not atypical of new technology when they come out. There's all sorts of promises that are often made. We saw this with things like electricity, with the telegraph, with radio, with movies, with television, with the internet, with the first smartphone and the BlackBerry and blah, 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 blah. That sort of arc of, oh my goodness, now at last we have everything that we've ever wanted in a communication or media device, and now it's AI. Very typical. So I don't want, I'm not encouraging you to be a curmudgeon, but be analytical, be skeptical, okay, and ask to see if the statements align with the data. And now I can't say that this is how all distressed peoples interact with all social media, but in terms of the group that I looked at, I thought I'd give you an opportunity to take a look and see, okay, here's what I found. And then likewise, for those of you who are considering doing a dissertation, to give you an opportunity to look at, how one is structured. Okay. All right, let's take a look at your questions. Question number 1, according to Gardner's research, do all global organizations like ISIS, Hezbollah, or Hamas use global communication platforms to do evil rather than good? In your opinion, is it possible to keep global communication tools like social media applications out of the hands of these groups? Let's see what you had to say. Let's go to the first one here. Austin, you were first. Let's go with you. Gardner notes that the expanse of digital technology makes it highly likely that social technologies will be used by everyone to connect with everyone, thus technological connection and the release of those digital videos from these organizations will produce potential harm. Gardner cites specific ISIS intimidation videos of fake checkpoints for murder of specific targets. Yeah, and actually I witnessed some of these, not the murders, but the checkpoints. And there were some that we steered off from, and in my work there. But using social media, which if you lived in a, we talk about that there are concerns about getting doxxed or getting harassed or getting canceled or something because of your presence on social media. But imagine you lived in a milieu, a country, an environment in which your use on social media, just picture associated with name, could be the means by which an organization tracked you down and killed you. that would impact how you interface with social media. Okay, and so it did. It's nearly impossible to consider how to take these resources out of the hands out of these individuals' hands. True. If it were, Gardner suggests using social media and technology to assist potential refugees, those technologies will inevitably end up in the hands of evil organizations. Once a technology is introduced publicly, it is inevitable that both well-intentioned and ill-intentioned individuals will get their hands on it. And this, exactly. So, be wary when you hear all upside to the introduction of any type of media, and you don't see anything in the way of appropriate consideration of some of its downsides. Now, a downside to a technology that there is a downside in and of itself is not sufficient to shut it down, but it should go into the calculation. All right. I mean, I can tell you from personal perspective, it certainly does go into my calculation. Downsides, and I'm not just talking about ne'er-do-wells and evildoers. I'm talking about how the technology impacts me. I mean, I'll give you an example. This thing right here, no vibrations, no pings. When it's out of my hand, and I always have it on mute, and it's off because it's out of my hands. When it's out of my hands, I'm not using it. All right? I'm working very hard to get my brain to understand that this thing is just like this thing, this pencil. This is a tool, and there are specific things that I do with this pencil, and there's things that I don't do. I would not stir stir a pot of mac and cheese. I wouldn't stir a pot of mac and cheese anyway because I don't eat mac and cheese. But I wouldn't stir a pot of sauce with a pencil. All right. And I don't carry the pencil around all the time, excuse me, worrying and wondering what it is that I've got to write down, and maybe there's something. This is a specific tool with specific applications, and when I'm not engaged in those applications, there's no need for me to have the tool, because in my estimation, one of the downsides of this technology is the constant interruption that it introduces into our lives and the subsequent breaking of periods of concentration. And everybody talks about the flow state. How often do we get to that? But at the very least, my aim is to flow through my work minus interruptions. So it doesn't mean that you throw the whole thing out with the bathwater. You're just conscientious of the effect of the technology. Back to the question specifically, there is a movement afoot. It started, I believe, in Australia, but don't quote me on that. All right, I have to double check my facts. To require software applications to have people register and verify identity. Now, some people see this, excuse me, as the right step in the direction of removing bad actors from social media platforms who get on and either put forward a fake identity or are not even a person, they're a bot, or hide behind anonymity and commit criminal acts. They steal data, they harass people, they engage in terrorist acts. Now, these laws aren't going to apply to other countries, but here in the United States, those very same laws are catching on. In some states, like the state that I live in, I saw a news story the other day that said that the state is now passing laws that require pornographic sites with pornographic content. They require registration of users with a picture of a physical ID to be able to prove that those users are above the age of 18. Now, first and foremost, by way of an activity, I could, and I would happily make the case 6 ways from Sunday as to why anyone should not engage with pornographic material. It's illicit. It is a misshapen view of God's creation, great creation that is the human person. It does no good for the person. It does no good for the individual. No, I don't believe that sex work is work. I mean, yeah, in the strictest sense, but so on and so forth. However, since it's legal and allowed, it's interesting to note that one of the unintended effects of requiring a picture. I mean, you actually, according to this law now in the state that I'm in, you have to, when you register for the site, you have to hold up your picture and have it photographed. And there are many of these sites that are just saying, you know what, we're not going to allow users with IP addresses in this state to use our platform. So now, from the point of view of the state, if the state's intention is to drive down the participation with users to these sites, mission accomplished. All right. One of the objections to having people register with a physical ID as verification that's come up, and I think this is reasonable, these type of illicit sites aside, is that, you show me an organization that has a database and I'll show you an organization that's had a data leak. And what are the implications for the users who, when not only information like social security number, address, maybe credit card number, bank stuff, that leaks out, but photo ID, which can be captured, enhanced, and then turned into real physical things that can be used as part of identity theft and fraud. And the hot debate around some of these social media applications is there are some of them that their key feature, that is their key selling point, is complete anonymity. This one, so if I can get this, okay, there it is, WhatsApp. All right. Absolutely encrypted. All messages that go, is my camera not focusing now? Let's see, get to focus on my fuzzy head. There we go. All messages that go out and all messages that come in are encrypted, and WhatsApp doesn't store any messages. In fact, I think they destroy them almost in real time. So you don't know who's communicating to whom about what. And that's the selling feature. Now, I will tell you that I use and have used social media applications like WhatsApp when I work in dangerous areas, for precisely the purpose that they were designed, and that is to keep my presence and my activity while I'm in that area anonymous. But bad actors can do the same. So yes, you are absolutely correct, Austin. There's really no practical way to keep this out of the hands of folks. And when as the saying goes, when the genie gets let out of the bottle, and understand, in Middle Eastern mythology, which is where the image of jinn is actually the term that they use. Once the jinn is released within the mythological framework, jinns are not Robin Williams sounding purple happy-go-lucky creatures. They're evil spirits that are here to trick and deceive. They're more Faustian than they are Disney Aladdin. All right. They're here to make false bargains with humanity. That is, they represent the temptation to bargain away freedoms for the promise of ease and facilitated outcome. Okay, which some would argue, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them, but a lot of the emerging technology fits that definition. All right, question number 2. Why, according to Gardner, do Christians in the Middle East need much more research attention? Do you agree with his assertion? Shadara, on page 3 of the dissertation, Gardner states that while refugees face the difficulty of navigating foreign countries, displaced persons lack the protection of international law, and they're thus not eligible to receive international aid. A fact that can make their experience even more traumatic than that of a refugee, all while trying to become accustomed to their new norm. Christians were suffering, but were finding but were finding support using technology. Christians in the Middle East use technology to connect with those in distant lands who may be able to provide them resources what they not get from the government currently under Dr. Gardner's currently under, excuse me, Dr. Gardner shared that he was surprised to see how prevalent technology was in the Middle East for Christians. I agree and was intrigued with Gardner's assertion as this focused on groups who had to learn to become accustomed to new traditions, government rules. Okay, yeah, that's true. But remember, try to answer the question as quickly and directly. Why do they need more research attention? Those are certainly things that they're suffering from. Okay, Kai, let's see what you had to say. According to Dr. Gardner, despite high levels of social media use among displaced Assyrian Christians, there is a significant gap in the understanding of how this usage affects their well-being and displacement experience. Additionally, social media has limited impact on increasing awareness or prompting action. Many IDPs feel that, although their posts are saying they are not truly understood by the outside world. I agree with the research findings. More attention should be given to this issue. Understanding these nuances can help develop tailored communication strategies and technology solutions that better meet the needs of displaced communities. Okay, yeah, exactly. This is a unique population in a unique region that not not unheard of problems that are faced by distressed communities anywhere else, but it's unique to them, and especially because of the level of the intensity and severity and the consequential level of the problems that they face. From a research perspective, it as you point out, okay, Kai, it poses the opportunity to draw lessons to say, okay, how can we adapt these technologies to better assist distressed persons in these other environments? So there's the external validity because of the intensity that they're experiencing, and then there is the reality that Christians are persecuted at a significant level globally. Okay, and this is, are we living a post-Christian era? Yeah, I think so. As such, is the persecution of Christians, whether it's some sort of silly, no, you can't have a prayer before a football game. I mean, look, and this is not a violation of the separation idea. There is no clause in the Constitution. Okay. And Jefferson did not articulate a separation of church and state as a constitutional principle, but that's become the precedent. That's become the norm. So kneeling down and saying a prayer before a football game is not the imposition of religion on others at a government-sponsored event. Now, if you insisted that everybody now kneel down and pray with you, or they didn't get to play football or whatever, okay, yes. So whether it's on a global stage or locally, I think there's a significant tolerance, and there shouldn't be. There's a significant allowance. That's maybe the word I'm looking for the ignoring of issues of persecution where Christians are concerned, and this deserves more attention. Okay, question number 3. According to Gardner's research findings, how did IDPs in Northern Iraq feel when using social media applications? Did the IDPs, and this is internally displaced persons, see social media as a useful tool to resolve their displacement, which was the operative question. I mean, beyond do they use it and how do they get onto the internet if they're in a refugee camp? Okay. Maya, Gardner studies found that overall Syrian Christian IDPs felt positive emotional support when using social media applications that allowed them to maintain familial and friendly relationship and stay connected beyond the camp walls. However, the IDPs did not see social media application or internet communicative technologies as tools to resolve their displacement. They expressed frustration that they were visible but not seen as the public, seen as the people with the power to help saw them but took no action. For them, social media and ITCs can facilitate aid and support and movement, but have no power to make a direct impact. As I read last week in Schmidt and Cohen, social media can't make miracles. Yeah, that's fair enough. Even then, the conditions in the camp limited resources and aid. There was no way to send or withdraw money. Posting pictures about the conditions with a catch-22 could have contributed to sympathy burnout, all while making the user a target. Yeah, good answer. And there were some that they were just like, how does this make me feel? And there were some that in conjunction with, okay, everybody sees this, but nobody's doing anything, they felt pretty bad about it. Some of them told me directly that they felt like animals in a zoo, that everybody could see them. And now you have to think, that understand in other parts of the world, zoo has the old-timey sort of definition that is animals in these little teeny cramped cages. We think of zoos now, and we build these, lavish habitat reconstruction where the giraffes get to wander around and it looks like this, the great savannas of Africa and such. Okay, and a lot of the parts of the world, no, the animals are just put in these little pens with bars or fencing, and people stand and stare at them. That's how they felt. What I found out, and I just didn't expect, is what one of the primary causes for this. I mean, despite we keep saying, "Hey, here we are," but nobody's helping. Is they didn't understand the algorithm that was at work in a lot of social media, and that is the purpose of social media is to make money for the social media company, and posts that attract attention and establish a certain vibe feeling and enable the social media company to post ads that people will like. Those posts get pushed up to the top. Posts that are sort of kind of a downer, and I'm offended, and don't pair well with ads and the vibe, those get pushed down. So, after a while, people living in a large chain link barbed wire compound, living in filth and squalor, kind of a downer, man. Oh, hey, look, a cat with a ball of string. Up that goes. And, that was not something that they were aware of. And why would they be? Social media early on, now remember, this is like 2014, 2013. This is before, guys like Mark Zuckerberg had been dragged up in front of Congress, and in which they were forced to disclose that the purpose of social media, the product in social media, the thing that's bought and sold, is us. It's our data. That's where the money is. So you go to social media and you go, wow, look at all this cool stuff. And it's like going into, a candy shop or a pastry shop and go, ooh, look at this. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, I could get this. I could get that. I get that. Surprise. You're the donut in the display case. You're the thing on sale. You think that you're looking at the product from the consumer side of the glass when in fact, based on how this stuff operates, you're the product looking out of the glass, not disclosed in the early days of social media. Question number 4. After reading the interview summaries in Gardner's Apex C, select one interview and summarize the interview's attitudes about the utility of social media in a global communication environment. Now, this is probably not something you're going to see on a test, okay? But what I wanted to do is give you a little sampling of how a mixed methods study goes. You have the quantitative side and you have the qualitative side, and you can find out that something is happening with quantitative and sometimes the causes, but you can get down into the granular reasons, the whys, through qualitative interviews, and that's why I did those. Okay, let's take a look here. Trinity. One of the interviews that caught my eye was Frederick. He comes up pretty general about it. He sees social media as useful for staying connected and getting information, especially in a situation where you don't have much control over everything else. But he doesn't just see the positives. There's a clear sense that, it helps you feel less cut off, but it's actually not changing his situation or getting him out of it. It feels like he values it for what it is, not for what people wish it could be. Like it's a tool but not a solution. And he seems very aware of that line. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There are some people that didn't want to talk, because of social norms within the society. Some people that are like, some of them, remember some of the reactions of some of the people were like, tool to get me out of here. I mean, it was almost like I asked them, so tell me, how do you catch a fish with a hammer? And they're like, what? That's not what you use to catch a fish. You don't use a hammer to catch a fish. And so asking them about how do you use social media to resolve your situation, they're like, not doing me any good. And then they would start to go into why. Okay. So this helped inform the results from the quantitative side. Okay. All right, everybody, time's up. Thank you so very much for your hard work. Keep working on those papers. All right. In the next couple of weeks, my time to work with you is limited to my office hours, as I said. So please, if you have a note and you haven't talked to me already, get in touch. I'm here to help. Everybody have a blessed Holy Week. All right. And happy Easter as we move into this time of sacrificial crucifixion and resurrection. We can think about that within our own lives, right? What is our cross? What are we sacrificing? Not my will, but thy will. I would have it that this cup would pass from me, Father, and I think that's a pretty good reflection for all our lives. Okay, so as you move through this Holy Week and Easter, remember that I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you, and I will see you again on Canvas. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.